It is sad to see that in the modern time, most people think of witches and witchcraft as entirely evil. But looking back in history, this is just not the case. Of course there are those who have claimed to be in league with the devil, and on his orders carried out horrific atrocities. Yet for each demon summoning sorceress, there are an equal amount of wise women and healers who have only used their power to help others. Unfortunately, during the witch hunts conducted in Scotland, the leaders of the church, and on many occasions the king himself, would treat all whom used unearthly power in the same grisly fashion. The wise woman of Lynn, Bessie Dunlop. Far back in the 16th century, there lived a woman by the name of Bessie Dunlop. She was a young wife of an Ayrshire farmer named Andrew Jack. The pair lived and worked in a small farmer's cottage in the land of Lynn. On one afternoon, Bessie was driving cattle from her home so that they could graze in the pasture near old MONKCASTLE. As the woman headed to the now abandoned abbey, she cried tears of despair, for she had much troubles. Bessie's best cow was very sick, and so too were her husband and newborn child. In fact, Bessie herself had been ill the week before, but now feeling a little better, had to care for the animals. While the woman was lost in her misery, she heard a man's voice call out, "Good day, Bessie." As she looked up, the farmer's wife saw what she would later describe as an honest, elderly man, grey-bearded, and had a grey coat with Lombard sleeves of the old fashion, a pair of grey breeks and white shanks, garter above the knee, a black bonnet in his head, close behind and plain afore, with silken laces drawn through the lips thereof, and a whacked wand in his hand. She had never before met this strange man, but as he knew of her, she reckoned him to be a local. Bessie told the man of her anxieties, and happily replied to his questions. Finally the man, in an authoritative voice, told the woman that her cow and 2 sheep would die from the sickness, and unfortunately, so would her newborn son. The only peace of mind he could give was that her husband would make a full recovery. Bessie was stunned at this revelation, and at the confidence of the strange man. She questioned who he was to have such knowledge. The odd man told the farmer's wife that his name was Thomas Reid, and in his life he had been a soldier, and fought alongside the Earl of Arran at the Battle of Piccadilly. It was at that battle, 30 years ago, on the 10th of September 1547, that Thomas Reid died fighting the English. To Bessie, the unbelievable story of Thomas's life became far more plausible when the old man turned about and walked straight through a stone wall in the yard of MONKCASTLE. The confused woman ran to the wall, her mind flooded with questions, but she could see no hole or passage in the stained dyke. Very unsettled by this encounter, Bessie returned home, where she would find that the sinister predictions of the dead soldier had come true. In her yard, the animals lay dead, and as she rushed inside, she found her husband crying over the body of her newborn son. Soon after this tragedy, Thomas Reid would appear again. This time, he boldly invited the distraught woman to deny her God and forsake her faith. In return, Thomas would grant the woman knowledge and power. But Bessie refused to renounce her religion, so once again the soldier disappeared. The next ghostly meeting occurred within Bessie's own home. On that day, she and her husband had invited 3 close friends to the house, and as they were sitting in conversation, the door blew open and in stepped the soldier. To Bessie's horror, it would appear that she was the only person in the room that could see and hear Thomas Reid. The guests and Andrew looked astounded when the corner of Bessie's apron was plucked into the air by an invisible force, and the woman was led from the room. From Bessie's view, Thomas had told her that she was required at a matter of immense importance and hurriedly pulled her out of the house. The poor woman was led from her door out onto the path and away over a nearby hill. It was only then that the soldier told her to stand still and be silent, no matter what she might hear or what she might see. Suddenly appearing all around her, as if from the very ether itself, were a group of 12 people, 8 women and 4 men, all clad in the finest of clothes and beautiful to look upon. As the group came ever closer to the woman, she heard an otherworldly voice speak.
"Welcome, Bessie. Wilt thou go with us?"
The voice questioned, but true to her word, the farmer's wife did not move nor give any reply. The beings seemed to converse for some time, and then with a frightful howl, they disappeared in a whirlwind of smoke. When Thomas returned, he told Bessie that the odd people she had seen were the good wights, whom dwell in the court of Fairy, the Doynashi. He had brought them here to prove his proposition honest, to go with him to the other world. He would guide her there, as Thomas knew the way to the kingdom of the Sidhe. Bessie, ever cautious, told the man that she saw no profit in following him to the Fae court, unless she knew why the man wanted her to go. Thomas told the wife that in the other world she could live forever as he did, and be granted the knowledge of the Sidhe. This prospect did not tempt Bessie. She did not want to leave her husband nor life behind. A sudden anger came over Thomas as he turned about and marched off, mumbling to himself. The farmer's wife had nothing left to do but return home in her confused state. After some time, the ghostly soldier recovered from his anger and would return to see Bessie on many occasions. Over the weeks and months, the soldier and the farmer's wife became great friends. During this time, Thomas would teach Bessie a great many things and pass on the hidden knowledge of the Sidhe, whom he visited regularly. Bessie would learn to create medicine and be told the means to cure disease from both animal and human. Bessie began to use this knowledge to help local farmers and friends. But in time, rumours would spread of the wise woman of Lynn. Many told tales of Bessie Dunlop and of how she had helped them or their cattle. Eventually the wife became quite well known as a healer and wise woman. She would aid any that asked for help, from farmer to merchants, and even the aristocracy. On one occasion, Bessie was employed by the Laird of Stanley, whose young daughter had become ill. Bessie created a potion from strong ale, ginger, cloves and aniseed, which she gave to the young girl, who was fully recovered within a few days. It was reported that Bessie did the same for a poor couple from Town's Head. She came to their farmhouse and treated their children with a mixture of herbs. The wise woman would also be called for as a midwife. Bessie herself stated that she had no great knowledge in midwifery, but would ask Thomas for assistance. The soldier would give the woman a piece of green silken lace, which she was instructed to tie about the expecting mother's left arm. As long as the lace touched the patient's skin, no harm would come to the child during birth. The team of Thomas and Bessie was powerful indeed, but they were not able to solve all problems. One story tells of the Lady Kilbowie, who suffered from a crooked leg and came to Bessie for help. The wise woman consulted her ghostly partner, who advised that nothing could be done to help the elderly woman, as she was too old and frail for tonics and potions. There were also many non-medical issues that locals would bring before the wise woman. A noble from the barony of Renfrewshire once involved Bessie in the search for gold coins stolen from a purse. Again the wise woman asked the soldier, and after some time he came back with the name of a man whose house was searched and the coins were found. Once again the wise woman of Lynn had shown great knowledge and power. A wealthy burgess from the borough of Irvine heard the tale of the stolen coins and wondered if the wise woman could do the same for him. This man, by the name of William Kyle, tracked down Bessie and told her of an incident regarding the theft of an expensive cloak belonging to a friend of his, and asked the wise woman to name the thief. Bessie told the man that the cloak was gone, and that a person by the name of Mally Boyd had taken it. To disguise her actions, Boyd had cut up the cloak and made for herself a new kirtle, so there was no hope in retrieving the item intact. William was furious at the news. He would have to return to his friend empty-handed and look very much the fool. Because of this, he vented his rage on Bessie. The wise woman of Lynn was arrested and confined to the Irvine toll booth for her failure to return the cloak to William Kyle. No official trial was had and no sentence had been given, but the poor woman found herself in the cold cell nonetheless. Bessie was forced to stay imprisoned for a few months, until news reached an influential acquaintance of hers, a Mr. James Blair. He had heard of the injustice done to Bessie, and used his sway with the local authorities to get the woman released. Unfortunately for Bessie, this would only grow her public profile. Men and women from miles around now ventured to the Glen of Lynn to find the mystical, wise woman and receive gifts of medicine and magic. This new renown brought Bessie to the attention of the church, and within no time at all, she stood accused by persons unknown. The accusation was the use of sorcery, witchcraft, and incantation, with invocation of spirits of the devil, and had familiarity with them at all such time she thought expedient, and finally dealing with charms and the devilish craft of sorcery. Bessie was torn from her husband and her home on the 20th of September 1576 to face a criminal trial under the charge of witchcraft. She was taken to the High Court of Justiciary in Dalkeith, Edinburgh, and a specialist witch hunter from Glasgow was sent for. Within the court, and in front of the judges and members of the church, the witch hunter tore the clothes from the wise woman. Her body was painstakingly searched with an efficiency I will not describe here, for the devil's mark, which they claim was found. Then, to nullify her powers and spells, a blade was used to carve the symbol of the cross onto her face, a practice known in Scotland as being scored up in the breath. It was only now a confession could be extracted. Firstly, Bessie was suspended by only her thumbs. Then the witch hunter held the soles of her feet to a flame, and as the skin on the woman's feet blistered and burned, Bessie screamed the tale I have just told you. Meeting the dead soldier Thomas Reid, the temptation of the Sidhe, and of how she used her knowledge to help others. On that day, the 8th of November 1576, Bessie Dunlop was found guilty of witchcraft. Her punishment was to be hung until unconscious, awoken, then burned alive at the stake. So ended the life of the evil witch of Lynn. That is all that was known about the wise woman of Lynn, and all the information I could find from historical sources. But in more recent years, a few common theories have appeared to try and explain Bessie's wondrous tale. One of which proposes that the old man Thomas Reid was actually a Catholic priest, who at the time was in hiding from the new Protestant regime. In a telling of this tale, included in Walter Scott's Letters on Demonology and Witchcraft, when Thomas and Bessie meet, the old man speaks the words, "Sancta Maria Bessie," a known Catholic greeting, but all other sources I could find uses the term, "Good day." Continuing with Scott's version, the man tells Bessie that she must have angered God, and his advice is to make amends to the Almighty. Later, when he asks her to disavow her God, Scott specifically makes reference to the God that the woman was christened under. It has been suggested that this may have been the priest asking the woman to become Catholic and disavow the Reformation, which was occurring at the time. Perhaps this is why the local abbey of MONKCASTLE was abandoned, and it's possible Thomas was using it as a place to hide during the Reformation. This proposed explanation, to me, seems to fall very short. It has no suggestion for his medical knowledge, multiple accurate prophecies, encounters with the Sidhe, and doesn't mention his military service or invisibility. From the research I have done, there is no record of a Thomas Reid dying at the Battle of Pinkie Cleugh. This does not mean that it did not occur, just that I could not find it, or that it wasn't recorded. It has also been suggested that Bessie Dunlop and Thomas may have had some connection to CLEAVES Cove, a cave system on the Blair estate, only a few miles from the Glen of Lynn. This labyrinth of tunnels was called the Elfheima Blair by the locals, and legend has it that on Samhain night, a great procession of the Sidhe could be seen leaving the cove. Over the years, there has been many bodies discovered in the cove that date from the 16th century. Was this the priest's hiding place and link with the Sidhe? We have no way of knowing. In the same vein, it is impossible to know if Bessie's testimony and confession is true, especially as it was gained through horrible torture. Perhaps the woman drew from local knowledge and legends of the Sidhe to create the tale, while under the inconceivable pressure of the situation. In the confession of Bessie Dunlop, she never once makes mention of deals with the devil or any evil spirits. The only benefit she gained from her connection with Thomas was the means to create medicine and recover stolen property. For the use of her services, Bessie never accepted payment. All she wanted was to help the ill and the unfortunate. For this, the woman was dragged from her house, stripped, tortured, and burned alive. Whether her testimony is true or not really has no bearing on this case. An innocent woman was sentenced to death in the most horrible way possible. Perhaps on Bessie's final walk to the witch's pyre, she wondered if she really should have gone with Thomas to Elfheim and lived for eternity, a ghost in the world of the Sidhe. Thank you for listening, and a special thank you to all those who support me on Patreon. Slang Shiva